What first aid remedies may be used for bee stings?
If a person is allergic to bee stings, he or she should seek professional medical care immediately. For persons not allergic to bee stings, the following steps may be taken. The stinger should be removed by scraping it with a knife. A long fingernail, or a credit card, rather than by trying to pull it out. A wet aspirin may be rubbed on the area of the sting to help neutralize some of the inflammatory agents in the venom. Unless the person is allergic or sensitive to aspirin taken by mouth. A paste made of meat tenderizer, or another product that contains papain, mixed with water will relieve the pain. Adults may take an antihistamine along with a mild pain reliever such as aspirin, ibuprofen, or acetaminophen.
How is percent of increase calculated?
To find the percent of increase, divide the amount of increase by the base amount. Multiply the result by 100%. For example, a raise in salary from $10,000 to $12,000 would have percent of increase equals 2,000/10,000 x 100% equals 20%.
How many different kinds of faults have been identified?
Faults are fractures in Earth's crust. Faults are classified as normal, reverse, or strike slip. Normal faults occur when the end of one plate slides vertically down the end of another. Reverse faults occur when one plate slides vertically up the end of another. A strike slip fault occurs when two plate ends slide past each other horizontally. In an oblique fault there is plate movement vertically and horizontally at the same time.
How long do most tornadoes last?
Most tornadoes have short lifespans, lasting less than 10 minutes, though they may be as short as only several seconds. Some may last an hour or longer. Tornadoes during the early to mid-1900s were often reported to be longer-lived, though many climatologists believe these may have been tornado series instead of one single event. An average tornado will travel 5 miles, 8 kilometers, during its lifespan. The tornado of March 18, 1925 traveled 219 miles, 352 kilometers, through Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana at an average speed of 60 to 73 miles per hour, 97 to 117 kilometers per hour.
What is kudzu?
Kudzu, pure Aria lobata. is a vine that was brought from Japan for the 1876 Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia. It was intentionally planted throughout the southern United States during the 1930s in an attempt to control erosion. In fact, the federal government paid farmers as much as $8 an acre to plant it. In 1997, however, the government reversed its position on kudzu and referred to it as a noxious weed. Kudzu grows over everything that it encounters, draping itself across power poles and pine trees like a shawl. The plant is responsible for more than $50 million in lost farm and timber production each year. It grows at a rate of 120,000 acres per year. As of the early 21st century, it covers between 2 and 4 million acres of land throughout the United States, occurring from Connecticut in the east to Missouri and Oklahoma in the west, and south to Florida and Texas. Kudzu grows as fast as 1 foot, 30 centimeters, per day. The latest approach to controlling the growth of kudzu is to have goats chew on it, devouring the leaves, stems, and roots.
How do neurons transmit information to other neurons?
Most neurons communicate with other neurons or muscle by releasing chemicals called neurotransmitters. These transmitters influence receptors on other neurons in a few specialized places. Neurons communicate directly with other neurons via pores called gap junctions.
Who performed some of the earliest studies on digestion?
William Beaumont, 1785 to 1853, an army surgeon, performed some of the earliest studies on digestion. In 1822, Alexis St. Martin, 1794 to 1880, was accidentally wounded by a shotgun blast. Beaumont began treatment of the wound immediately. St. Martin's recuperation lasted nearly 3 years, and the enormous wound healed except for a small opening leading into his stomach. A fold of flesh covered this opening. When this was pushed aside, the interior of the stomach was exposed to view. Through the opening, Beaumont was able to extract and analyze gastric juice and stomach contents at various stages of digestion. Observe changes in secretions, and note the stomach's muscular movements. The results of his experiments and observations formed the basis of our modern knowledge of digestion.
What is the largest nerve in the body?
The sciatic nerve is the largest in the human body, about as thick as a lead pencil, 0.78 inch, 1.98 centimeters. It is a broad, flat nerve composed of fibers that run from the spinal cord to the back of each leg.
In what ways are leaves economically important?
Leaves are used for food and beverages, dyes and fibers, and medicinal and other industrial uses. Certain plants, such as cabbage, Brassica oleracea, lettuce, Lactica sativa, spinach, Spinacia oleracea, and most herbs including parsley, Petroselinum crispum, and thyme, Thymus vulgaris, are grown for their leaves. Berbera leaves, Arctostaphylos uva ursi, contain a natural yellow dye, while henna leaves, Lawsonia inermis, contain a natural red dye. The leaves of palm trees are used to make clothing, brooms, and thatched huts in tropical climates. Aloe vera leaves are well known for treating burns and are also used in manufacturing medicated soaps and creams.
When was the first artificial heart used?
On December 2, 1982, Dr. Barney B. Clark, 1921 to 1983, a 61-year-old retired dentist, became the first human to receive a permanently implanted artificial heart. It was known as the Jarvik 7 after its inventor, Dr. Robert Jarvik. 1946. The 7.5-hour operation was performed by Dr. William DeVries, 1943, a surgeon at the University of Utah Medical Center. Dr. Clark died on March 23, 1983, 112 days later. In Louisville, Kentucky, William Schroeder, 1923 to 1986, survived 620 days with an artificial heart. November 25, 1984, to August 7, 1986. On January 11, 1990, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration (FDA) recalled the Jarvik 7, which had been the only artificial heart approved by the FDA for use. Two models of a total artificial heart, TA, are now available that can replace the ventricles, the two lower chambers, of the heart. Eligible patients must have end-stage heart failure, meaning all treatments except a heart transplant have failed. A TA may keep patients alive while they wait for heart transplants, or may keep patients alive who are not eligible for a heart transplant. The two brands are the Cardioist and ABIOCOR. The Cardioist is connected to a power source outside of the body via tubes that run from inside the chest to the outside through holes in the abdomen. The ABIOCOR is a battery-powered TA that is completely contained in the chest. The battery is charged through the skin with a special magnetic charger.
How much salt is in brackish water?
Brackish water has a saline, salt, content between that of fresh water and sea water. It is neither fresh nor salty, but somewhere in between. Brackish waters are usually regarded as those containing 0.5 to 30 parts per thousand salt, while the average saltiness of seawater is 35 parts per thousand.
What is the circumference of Earth?
Earth is an oblate ellipsoid, a sphere slightly flattened at the poles and bulging at the equator. The distance around Earth at the equator is 24,902 miles, 40,075 kilometers. The distance around Earth through the poles is 24,860 miles, 40,008 kilometers.
How much of the U.S. energy supply is from renewable sources?
Renewable energy resources accounted for only 8% of total energy consumption. In the United States in 2009, hydropower is the single largest source of renewable energy in the United States, accounting for 35% of total renewable energy.
Who invented calculus?
The German mathematician Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. 1646 to 1716, published the first paper on calculus in 1684. Most historians agree that Isaac Newton invented calculus 8 to 10 years earlier, but he was typically very late in publishing his works. The invention of calculus marked the beginning of higher mathematics. It provided scientists and mathematicians with a tool to solve problems that had been too complicated to attempt previously.
What wood is the favorite for butcher's blocks?
Because of its resilience, the preferred wood for making butcher's blocks is derived from the American sycamore. Platanus occidentalis, also known as the American plane tree, buttonball, buttonwood, and water beech. The wood of Platanus occidentalis is also used as veneers, for decorative surfaces, fence posts, and fuel.
Who invented the computer mouse?
A computer mouse is a handheld input device that, when rolled across a flat surface, causes a cursor to move in a corresponding way on a display screen. A prototype mouse was part of an input console demonstrated by Douglas C. Engelhardt, 1925, in 1968 at the Fall Joint Computer Conference in San Francisco. Popularized in 1984 by the Macintosh from Apple Computer, the mouse was the result of 15 years devoted to exploring ways to make communicating with computers simpler and more flexible. The physical appearance of the small box with the dangling, tail-like wire suggested the name of mouse. In recent years, the mouse has evolved into other shapes and forms. One type is the wireless or tailless mouse, which does not have a cord to connect to the computer. Wireless mice use radio signals or infrared to connect to the computer.
What is the significance of the recycling symbol?
The familiar recycling symbol consists of 3 arrows representing the 3 components of recycling.
Who prepared the first weather map?
The first weather map was prepared by Francis Galton, 1822 to 1911. In 1862, his initial map was prepared by requesting detailed information about the weather in the month of December 1861 from weather stations throughout the British Isles. He plotted the data he collected, drawing the world's first weather map.
What is the largest number mentioned in the Bible?
The largest number specifically named in the Bible is 1,000,000, i.e., a million. It is found in 2 Chronicles 14:9.
What is a solar flare?
A solar flare is a sudden, intense release of energy in the sun's outer atmosphere. The magnetic energy of a solar flare is released in the form of radiation. At speeds of 1 million miles per hour, 1.6 kilometers per hour. The amount of energy released is equivalent to millions of 100 megaton hydrogen bombs exploding at the same time. The frequency of solar flares is coordinated with the sun's 11-year cycle. The number of solar flares is greatest at the peak of the solar cycle. Solar flares may be visible from Earth. The first solar flare observed and recorded was in 1859 by Richard C. Carrington, 1826 to 1875, who saw a sudden white light while observing sunspots.
How is the speed of a CPU measured?
Separate from the real-time clock which keeps track of the time of day. The CPU clock sets the tempo for the processor and measures the transmission speed of electronic devices. The clock is used to synchronize data pulses between sender and receiver. A 1 MHz clock manipulates a set number of bits 1 million times per second. In general, the higher the clock speed, the quicker data is processed. However, newer versions of software often require quicker computers just to maintain their overall processing speed. The Hertz is named in honor of Heinrich Hertz, 1857 to 1894, who detected electromagnetic waves in 1883. 1 Hertz is equal to the number of electromagnetic waves or cycles in a signal that is 1 cycle per second.
Why is the sea blue?
There is no single cause for the colors of the sea. What is seen depends in part on when and from where the sea is observed. Eminent authority can be found to support almost any explanation. Some explanations include absorption and scattering of light by pure water, suspended matter in sea water, the atmosphere, and color and brightness variations of the sky. For example, one theory is that when sunlight hits seawater, part of the white light, composed of different wavelengths of various colors, is absorbed, and some of the wavelengths are scattered after colliding with the water molecules. In clear water, red and infrared light are greatly absorbed but blue is least absorbed, so that the blue wavelengths are reflected out of the water. The blue effect requires a minimum depth of 10 feet, 3 meters, of water.
What are stem cells and what are some potential uses of such cells?
Stem cells are undifferentiated cells, meaning that they do not have a specific function that are capable, under certain conditions, of producing cells that can become a specific type of tissue. Stem cells could be used to grow new hearts that could be transplanted without fear of rejection. They could be used to renew the function of injured structures like the spinal cord. They could be used as cell models for drug testing, thereby increasing the speed for finding cures. The potential benefits of stem cells have made the laboratory studies and research investigating these cells very exciting, yet controversial.
What is a mutation?
A mutation is an alteration in the DNA sequence of a gene. Mutations are a source of variation to a population, but they can have detrimental effects in that they may cause diseases and disorders. One example of a disease caused by a mutation is sickle cell disease, in which there is a change in the amino acid sequence. Valine is substituted for glutamic acid. Of two of the 4 polypeptide chains that make up the oxygen-carrying protein known as hemoglobin.
What is the fastest growing land plant?
Bamboo, Bambusa spp. Native to tropical and subtropical regions of Southeast Asia and islands of the Pacific and Indian Oceans. Is the plant that gains height most quickly. Bamboo can grow almost 3 feet, 1 meter, in 24 hours. This rapid growth is produced partly by cell division and partly by cell enlargement.
How can animals be grouped according to body symmetry?
Symmetry refers to the arrangement of body structures in relation to the axis of the body. Most animals exhibit either radial or bilateral body symmetry. Animals such as jellyfishes, sea anemones, and starfishes have radial symmetry. In radial symmetry, the body has the general form of a wheel or cylinder. And similar structures are arranged as spokes from a central axis. The bodies of all other animals are marked by bilateral symmetry. A design in which the body has right and left halves that are mirror images of each other. A bilaterally symmetrical body plan has a top and a bottom, also known respectively as the dorsal and ventral portions of the body. It also has a front, or anterior, end and a back, or posterior, end.
Are there more chemical compounds with even numbers of carbon atoms than with odd?
A team of chemists recently noted that the database of the Beilstein Information System, containing over 9.6 million organic compounds, includes significantly more substances with an even number of carbon atoms than with an odd number. Statistical analyses of smaller sets of organic compounds, such as the Cambridge Crystallographic Database or the CRC Handbook of Chemistry and Physics, led to the same results. A possible explanation for the observed asymmetry might be that organic compounds are ultimately derived from biological sources, and nature frequently utilized acetate, a C2 building block, in its syntheses of organic compounds. It may therefore be that the manufacturers and synthetic chemists' preferential use of relatively economical starting materials derived from natural sources has left permanent traces in chemical publications and databases.
Who invented the computer?
Computers developed from calculating machines. One of the earliest mechanical devices, 3 for calculating, still widely used today, is the abacus, a frame carrying parallel rods on which beads or counters are strung. The abacus originated in Egypt in 2000 BCE. It reached the Orient about 1,000 years later, and arrived in Europe in about the year 300 CE. In 1617, John Napier invented Napier's bones, marked pieces of ivory for multiples of numbers. In the middle of the same century, Blaise Pascal produced a simple mechanism for adding and subtracting. Multiplication by repeated addition was a feature of a stepped drum or wheel machine of 1694, invented by Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. In 1823, the English visionary Charles Babbage, 1792–1871, persuaded the British government to finance an analytical engine. This would have been a machine that could undertake any kind of calculation. It would have been driven by steam. but the most important innovation was that the entire program of operations was stored on a punched tape. Babbage's machine was not completed in his lifetime because the technology available to him was not sufficient to support his design. However, in 1991 a team led by Doran Swade, 1946, at London Science Museum built the analytical engine. Sometimes called the difference engine, based on Babbage's work. Measuring 10 feet, 3 meters, wide by 6.5 feet, 2 meters, tall. It weighed 3 tons and could calculate equations down to 31 digits. The feat proved that Babbage was way ahead of his time, even though the device was impractical. Because one had to turn a crank hundreds of times in order to generate a single calculation. Modern computers use electrons, which travel at nearly the speed of light. Based on the concepts of British mathematician Alan M. Turing, 1912 to 1954, the earliest programmable electronic computer was the 1500 valve Colossus. Formulated by Max Newman, 1897 to 1985, built by T. H. Flowers, 1905 to 1998. And used by the British government in 1943 to crack the German codes generated by the cipher machine Enigma.
What is nuclear magnetic resonance?
Nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR, is a process in which the nuclei of certain atoms absorb energy from an external magnetic field. Analytical chemists use NMR spectroscopy to identify unknown compounds, check for impurities, and study the shapes of molecules. They use the knowledge that different atoms will absorb electromagnetic energy at slightly different frequencies.
How can the temperature be determined from the frequency of cricket chirps?
Listen for the chirping of either katydids or crickets. Then count the number of chirps you hear in 1 minute. For the following equation, C equals the number of chirps per minute, for katydids. Fahrenheit temperature equals 60 plus, C 19/3 for crickets, Fahrenheit temperature equals 50 plus, C 50/4.
How does driving speed affect gas mileage for most automobiles?
Most automobiles get about 28% more miles per gallon of fuel at 50 miles. 80.5 kilometers per hour than at 70 miles, 112 kilometers per hour, and about 21% more at 55 miles. 88.5 kilometers per hour than at 70 miles, 112 kilometers per hour.
How much blood does the average-sized adult human have?
An adult man has 5.3 to 6.4 quarts, or 1.5 gallons, 5 to 6 liters, of blood, while an adult woman has 4.5 to 5.3 quarts, or 1.2 gallons, 4 to 5 liters. Differences are due to the sex of the individual, body size, fluid and electrolyte concentrations, and amount of body fat.
How numerous are roundworms?
Roundworms, or nematodes, are members of the phylum Nematoda, from the Greek term nematos, meaning thread, and are numerous in two respects. 1. Number of known and potential species, and 2. The total number of these organisms in a habitat. Approximately 12,000 species of nematodes have been named. But it has been estimated that if all species were known, the number would be closer to 500. 000 nematodes live in a variety of habitats ranging from the sea to soil. 6 cubic inches, 100 cubic centimeters, of soil may contain several thousand nematodes. A square yard, 0.85 square meter, of woodland or agricultural soil may contain several million of them. Good topsoil may contain billions of nematodes per acre.
Who showed that plant cells were totipotent?
In 1958 Frederick Campion Stewart, 1904 to 1993, a botanist at Cornell University, successfully regenerated an entire carrot plant from a tiny piece of phloem. Small pieces of tissue from carrots were grown in a nutrient broth. Cells that broke free from the fragments dedifferentiated, meaning that they reverted to unspecialized cells. However, as these unspecialized cells grew, they divided and redifferentiated back into specialized cell types. Eventually, cell division and redifferentiation produced entire new plants. Each unspecialized cell from the nutrient broth expressed its genetic potential to make all the other cell types in a plant.
What actually happened at 3 Mile Island?
The worst commercial nuclear accident in the United States occurred at 3 Mile Island. The 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania experienced a partial meltdown of its reactor core and radiation leakage. On March 28, 1979, just after 4 a.m., a water pump in the secondary cooling system of the Unit 2 pressurized water reactor failed. A relief valve jammed open, flooding the containment vessel with radioactive water. A backup system for pumping water was down for maintenance. Temperatures inside the reactor core rose, fuel rods ruptured, and a partial, 52%, meltdown occurred. because the radioactive uranium core was almost entirely uncovered by coolant for 40 minutes. The thick steel reinforced containment building prevented nearly all the radiation from escaping. The amount of radiation released into the atmosphere was 1/1,000,000th of that at Chernobyl. However, if the coolant had not been replaced, the molten fuel would have penetrated the reactor containment vessel, where it would have come into contact with the water, causing a steam explosion, breaching the reactor dome, and leading to radioactive contamination of the area similar to the Chernobyl accident.
How many neurons are in the nervous system?
There are approximately 20 billion neurons in the nervous system.
Which industries release the most toxic chemicals?
The metal mining industry released the most toxic chemicals for the year 2008, accounting for 30% of total chemical releases.
What was the name of the personal computer introduced by Apple in the early 1980s?
Lisa was the name of the personal computer that Apple introduced. The forerunner of the Macintosh personal computer, Lisa had a graphical user interface and a mouse.
What is a patent?
A patent grants the property rights of an invention to the inventor. Once a patent is issued, it excludes others from making, using, or selling the invention in the United States. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office issues 3 types of patents. Utility patents are granted to anyone who invents or discovers any new and useful process, machine, manufactured article, compositions of matter, or any new and useful improvement in any of the above. Design patents are granted to anyone who invents a new, original, and ornamental design for an article of manufacture. Plant patents are granted to anyone who has invented or discovered and asexually reproduced any distinct and new variety of plant.
Is the world actually getting warmer?
Global surface temperatures increased at a rate of near 0.11 degree F/decade. 0.06 degree C/decade, during most of the 20th century. But the rate increased to approximately 0.29 degree F/decade, 0.16 degree C/decade, during the past 30 years. There have been 2 sustained periods of warming, one beginning around 1910 and ending around 1945, and the most recent beginning about 1976. The decade 2000 to 2009 is the warmest on record with An average global surface temperature of 0.96 degrees Fahrenheit 0.54 degrees Celsius above the 20th century average.
What were the smallest and largest dinosaurs?
Compsognathus, a carnivore from the late Jurassic period, 131 million years ago, was about the size of a chicken and measured, at most, 35 inches, 89 centimeters, from the tip of its snout to the tip of its tail. The average weight was about 6 pounds 8 ounces, 3 kilograms. But they could be as much as 15 pounds, 6.8 kilograms. The largest species for which a whole skeleton is known is Brachiosaurus. A specimen in the Humboldt Museum in Berlin measures 72.75 feet. 22.2 meters, long and 46 feet, 14 meters, high. It weighed an estimated 34.7 tons, 31,480 kilograms. Brachiosaurus was a four-footed, plant-eating dinosaur with a long neck and a long tail and lived from about 121 to 155 million years ago.
How is the age of a dog or cat computed in human years?
When a cat is 1 year old, it is about 20 years old in human years. Each additional year is multiplied by 4. Another source counts the age of a cat slightly differently. At age 1, a cat's age equals 16 human years. At age 2, a cat's age is 24 human years. Each additional year is multiplied by 4. When a dog is 1 year old, it is about 15 years old in human years. At age 2 it is about 24, after age 2, each additional year is multiplied by 4.
How do hurricanes get their names?
Since 1950, hurricane names have been officially selected from library sources and are decided on during the international meetings of the World Meteorological Organization, WMO. The names are chosen to reflect the cultures and languages found in the Atlantic, Caribbean, and Hawaiian regions. When a tropical storm with rotary action and wind speeds above 39 miles, 63 kilometers per hour develops, the National Hurricane Center near Miami, Florida, selects a name from one of the 6 listings for Region 4, Atlantic and Caribbean area. Letters Q, U, X, Y, and Z are not included because of the scarcity of names beginning with those letters.
What is an atom?
An atom is the smallest unit of an element, containing the unique chemical properties of that element. Atoms are very small. Several million atoms could fit in the period at the end of this sentence.
For whom is the Hubble Space Telescope named?
Edwin Powell Hubble, 1889 to 1953, was an American astronomer known for his studies of galaxies. His study of nebulae, or clouds the faint, unresolved luminous patches in the sky showed that some of them were large groups of many stars. Hubble classified galaxies by their shapes as being spiral, elliptical, or irregular. Hubble's law establishes a relationship between the velocity of recession of a galaxy and its distance. The speed at which a galaxy is moving away from our solar system, measured by its redshift, the shift of its light to longer wavelengths, presumed to be caused by the Doppler effect, is directly proportional to the galaxy's distance from it. The Hubble Space Telescope was deployed by the Space Shuttle Discovery on April 25, 1990. The telescope, which would be free of distortions caused by Earth's atmosphere, was designed to see deeper into space than any telescope on land. However, on June 27, 1990, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration announced that the telescope had a defect in one of its mirrors that prevented it from properly focusing. Although other instruments, including one designed to make observations in ultraviolet light, were still operating, nearly 40% of the telescope's experiments had to be postponed until repairs were made. On December 2, 1993, astronauts were able to make the necessary repairs. 4 of Hubble's 6 gyroscopes were replaced as well as 2 solar panels. Hubble's primary camera, which had a flawed mirror, was also replaced. Since that mission, 4 other servicing missions have been conducted, dramatically improving the HST's capabilities.
What is the cleanest fossil fuel?
Natural gas, composed primarily of methane, is the cleanest of all fossil fuels, producing only carbon dioxide and water vapor when it is burned. Coal and oil produce higher levels of harmful emissions, including nitrogen oxides and sulfur dioxide when burned. Coal creates the most carbon dioxide when it is burned. Natural gas emits 25 to 50% less carbon dioxide than either oil or coal for each unit of energy produced.
Is there such a thing as a completely circular rainbow?
All rainbows would be completely round except that the ground gets in the way of completing the circle. However, if viewed from a high altitude, such as an airplane, circular rainbows can be seen when the angle between the sun, the water droplets, and the plane is between the 40 degrees and 42 degrees. In this case, the rainbow is horizontal, meaning that it is parallel to the ground and therefore not blocked by the ground. This is quite a sight.
When does frost form?
A frost is a crystalline deposit of small thin ice crystals formed on objects that are at freezing or below freezing temperatures. This phenomenon occurs when atmospheric water vapor condenses directly into ice without first becoming a liquid. This process is called sublimation. Usually frost appears on clear, calm nights, especially during early autumn when the air above the earth is quite moist. Permafrost is permanently frozen ground that never thaws out completely.
Who invented the pacemaker?
Paul Zoll, 1911 to 1999, invented an electric stimulator device to deliver electrical impulses to the heart externally. In 1958, biomedical engineer Wilson Greatbatch, 1919, in cooperation with doctors William M. Chardak, 1915 to 2006, and Andrew A. Gage, 1922, invented the first internal pacemaker. It was a small, flat, plastic disc powered by a battery. It was implanted into the body and connected by wires sewn directly onto the heart. The wires emitted rhythmic electric impulses to trigger the heart's action. Pacemaker batteries now last from 6 to 10 years.
Do the continents move?
In 1912, a German geologist, Alfred Lothar Wegener, 1880 to 1930, theorized that the continents had drifted or floated apart to their present locations and that once all the continents had been a single land mass near Antarctica called Pangaea, from the Greek word meaning all earth. Pangaea then broke apart some 200 million years ago into two major continents called Laurasia and Gondwanaland. These two continents continued drifting and separating until the continents evolved into their present shapes and positions. Wegener's theory was discounted, but it has since been found that the continents do move sideways, not drift, at an estimated inch, 19 millimeters, annually because of the action of plate tectonics. American geologist William Maurice Ewing, 1906 to 1974, and Harry Hammond Hess, 1906 to 1969, proposed that Earth's crust is not a solid mass, but composed of 8 major and 7 minor plates that can move apart, slide by each other, collide, or override each other. Where these plates meet are major areas of mountain building, earthquakes, and volcanoes.
How far away is the nearest black hole?
The black hole nearest to Earth is V4641 Sagittarii. It is 1,600 light-years. 9,399,362, 677,500,000 miles, away from Earth.
What was the first virus to be isolated in a laboratory?
In 1935, Wendell Stanley, 1904 to 1971, of the Rockefeller Institute, known today as Rockefeller University, prepared an extract of the tobacco mosaic virus and purified it.
What is the composition of the Rock of Gibraltar?
It is composed of grey limestone, with a dark shale overlay on parts of its western slopes. Located on a peninsula at the southern extremity of Spain, the Rock of Gibraltar is a mountain at the east end of the Strait of Gibraltar. The narrow passage between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. The rock is 1,398 feet, 425 meters, tall at its highest point.
How long does it take light from the Sun to reach Earth?
Sunlight takes about 8 minutes and 20 seconds to reach Earth, traveling at 186,282 miles. 299,792 kilometers per second, although it varies with the position of Earth in its orbit. In January, the light takes about 8 minutes 15 seconds to reach Earth. In July, the trip takes about 8 minutes 25 seconds.
When were liquid crystals discovered?
Liquid crystals were observed by the Austrian botanist Friedrich Reinitzer, 1857 to 1927, in 1888. He noticed that the solid organic compound cholesterol benzoate became a cloudy liquid at 293 degrees Fahrenheit. 145 degrees Celsius, and a clear liquid at 354 degrees Fahrenheit 179 degrees Celsius. The following year, the German physicist Otto Lehmann, 1855 to 1922, used a microscope with a heating stage to determine that some molecules do not melt directly but first pass through a phase. When they flow like a liquid but maintain the molecular structure and properties of a solid. He coined the phrase liquid crystal to describe this substance. Further experimentation showed that if an electrical charge is passed through a liquid crystal material, the liquid will line up according to the direction of the electrical field. Liquid crystals are used for electronic panel displays.
What were the birth defects caused by the drug thalidomide?
In the early 1960s, thalidomide was marketed as a sedative and anti-nausea drug. It was found to cause birth defects in babies whose mothers had taken the drug for morning sickness. Some babies were born without arms or legs. Others were born blind or deaf or with heart defects or intestinal abnormalities. Although some were mentally retarded, most were of normal intelligence. This tragedy led to much stricter laws regulating the sale and testing of new drugs.
When were the first cases of West Nile virus reported in the United States?
The first cases of West Nile virus were identified in 1999 in the New York City area. West Nile virus is primarily a disease of birds found in Africa, West Asia, and the Middle East. It is transmitted to humans mainly via mosquito bites, mainly from the species Culex pipiens. The female mosquito catches the virus when it bites an infected bird and then passes it on when it later bites a human. In humans it causes encephalitis, an infection of the brain that can be lethal.
Why is Archaeopteryx important?
Archaeopteryx is the first known bird. It had true feathers that provided insulation and allowed this animal to form scoops with its wings for catching prey.
Are men or women more accident-prone?
Women drive and even cross the street more safely than men. Since 1980, men have accounted for 70% of pedestrian fatalities. Between the ages of 18 and 45, males outnumber females as fatal crash victims by almost 3 to 1. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, accidental deaths of all types from falls, firearms, drownings, fires. Even food and other poisonings also are more common among men than women.
What is a heat wave?
A heat wave is a period of 2 days in a row when apparent temperatures on the National Weather Service heat index exceed 105 degrees Fahrenheit to 110 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius to 43 degrees Celsius. Heat waves can be extremely dangerous. According to the National Weather Service, 175 to 200 Americans die from heat in a normal summer. Between 1936 and 1975, as many as 15,000 Americans died from problems related to heat. In 1980, 1,250 people died during a brutal heat wave in the Midwest. In 1995, more than 500 people died in the city of Chicago from heat-related problems. A majority of these individuals were the elderly living in high-rise apartment buildings without proper air conditioning. Large concentrations of buildings, parking lots, And roads create an urban heat island in cities with higher temperatures than the surrounding open, rural areas.
How old is the universe?
Recent data collected by the Hubble Space Telescope suggest that the universe may only be 8 billion years old. This contradicts the previous belief the universe was somewhere between 13 billion and 20 billion years old. The earlier figure was derived from the concept that the universe has been expanding at the same rate since its birth at the Big Bang. The rate of expansion is a ratio known as Hubble's constant. It is calculated by dividing the speed at which the galaxy is moving away from Earth by its distance from Earth. By inverting Hubble's constant, that is, dividing the distance of a galaxy by its recessional speed, the age of the universe can be calculated. The estimates of both the velocity and distance of galaxies from Earth are subject to uncertainties. And not all scientists accept that the universe has always expanded at the same rate. Therefore, many still hold that the age of the universe is open to question.
What is the most expensive spice in the world?
The world's most expensive spice is saffron. The spice was highly sought after by the ancient civilizations of Egypt, Assyria, Phoenicia, Persia, Crete, Greece, and Rome. The term saffron comes from the Arabic word za'afaran, meaning yellow. The spice is obtained from the delicate stigmas of an autumn crocus. Crocus sativus, a species native to eastern Mediterranean countries and Asia Minor. Spain is the principal producer of saffron for world markets. Crocus sativus is propagated by corms. The blooming period for the crocus is approximately 2 weeks, after which the flowers must be picked while they are in full bloom and before any signs of wilting. Once picked, the 3-part stigmas are removed from the petals before the petals wilt. This is a time-consuming process that can only be done by hand as the stigmas are very fragile. Then the stigmas are roasted and sold either as whole threads, whole stigmas, or powder. In order to harvest 1 pound, 0.45 kilogram, of the spice, between 75,000 and 100,000 flowers must be picked. Approximately 4,000 stigmas yield 1 ounce, 28 grams, of the spice. In 2010 it was reported that wholesale price of low-quality saffron was $500 per pound, $1,100 per kilogram. The average retail price in Western countries is $1,000 per pound, $2,200 per kilogram, confirming its place as the world's most costly spice.
Is coffee native to Colombia or Brazil?
although premium coffee is today grown in the mountains of Central and South America. The coffee tree, Coffea arabica, is native to Ethiopia. Coffee was widely used in the Arab world before its introduction to European society in the 17th century. North and South American coffee plantations were started in the 18th century.
What cell structures are unique to plant cells and which ones are unique to animal cells?
The chloroplast, central vacuole, tonoplast, cell wall, and plasmodesmata are only found to occur in plant cells. Lysosomes and centrioles are found only in animal cells.
Which are the world's largest deserts?
Deserts are distinguished by two general characteristics. First, desert areas receive less than 10 inches of precipitation per year. Second, due to the extreme dryness, there is little plant or animal life in most deserts. Many deserts form a band north and south of the equator at about 20 degrees latitude because moisture-bearing winds do not release their rain over these areas. As the moisture-bearing winds from the higher latitudes approach the equator, their temperatures increase and they rise higher and higher in the atmosphere. When the winds arrive over the equatorial areas and come in contact with the colder parts of Earth's atmosphere, they cool down and release all their water to create the tropical rainforests near the equator. However, other parts of the world, such as Antarctica, are also desert regions. The average annual precipitation in Antarctica is less than 10 inches per year. The Sahara Desert, the world's largest, is 3 times the size of the Mediterranean Sea. In the United States, the largest desert is the Mojave Desert in southern California with an area of 15,000 square miles, 38,900 square kilometers.
What is STP?
The abbreviation STP is often used for standard temperature and pressure. As a matter of convenience, scientists have chosen a specific temperature and pressure as standards for comparing gas volumes. The standard temperature is 0 degrees Celsius 273 degrees Kelvin and the standard pressure is 760 torr, 1 atmosphere.
Where do haybubs occur?
Haybubs, derived from the Arabic word hab meaning to blow, are violent dust storms with strong winds of sand and dust. They are most common in the Sahara region of Africa and the deserts of southwestern United States, Australia, and Asia.
How are warts caused?
A wart is a lump on the skin produced when one of the 30 types of papillomavirus invades skin cells and causes them to multiply rapidly. There are several different types of warts: common warts, usually on injury sites, flat warts on hands, accompanied by itching, digitate warts having finger-like projections, filiform warts on eyelids, armpits, and necks, plantar warts on the soles of the feet, and genital warts. Pink cauliflower-like areas that, if occurring in a woman's cervix, could predispose her to cervical cancer. Each is produced by a specific virus, and most are usually symptomless. Wart viruses are spread by touch or by contact with the skin shed from a wart.
What are some animals that have pouches?
Marsupials, meaning pouched animals, differ from all other living mammals in their anatomical and physiological features of reproduction. Most female marsupials, including kangaroos, bandicoots, wombats, banded anteaters, koalas, possums, wallabies, and Tasmanian devils, possess an abdominal pouch, called a marsupium, in which their young are carried. In some small terrestrial marsupials, however, the marsupium is not a true pouch but merely a fold of skin around the mammae, milk nipples. The short gestation period in marsupials, in comparison to other similarly sized mammals, allows their young to be born in an undeveloped state. Consequently, these animals have been viewed as primitive or second-class mammals. However, some now see that the reproductive process of marsupials has an advantage over that of placental mammals. A female marsupial invests relatively few resources during the brief gestation period. More so during the lactation, nursing period, when the young are in the marsupium. If the female marsupial loses its young, it can conceive again sooner than a placental mammal in a comparable situation.